Hello, everybody, and a huge thank you for joining us today for our discussion on building the tools for cross-team communication. This is a Lead Dev webinar created in partnership with Expedia. The webinar will last roughly 45 minutes, after which both myself and the panelists will head over towards the Lead Dev Slack to answer some of your questions in the effective-teams channel. We may also have time to answer a couple of questions live, so please do submit those through the Q&A feature on Zoom, and we'll get to them towards the end. So let's get started with some introductions. My name is Laura Tchaikovsky, and today I'll be joined by Bruce Wang, Mike Winslow, and Gayatri to share their experiences and insights. I'll ask each of you to introduce yourselves. Gayatri, would you mind going first?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. Really pleased to be here as part of the panel today. I'm Gayatri Tyagarajan. I'm a senior data engineering manager working for Expedia Group, based here in London. I also lead our UK Tech apprenticeships, have a young family, a 9-year-old daughter, and really looking forward to sharing my thoughts with you all today.
Thank you. Mike?
Hi, everyone. I'm Mike Winslow. I'm senior engineering leader. Been in many industries. Like I said, I came out of college just before Y2K, so that probably paints a good picture as far as you know, the difficulty that I had coming out and how I know that the purpose of engineering is a strong one. So looking forward to sharing all kinds of insights over the years that I've been in engineering.
Amazing, thank you. And Bruce, over to you.
Hey, I'm Bruce Wang. I'm engineering director at Netflix, the team called API Systems. I've been there over a little over a year. I'm based in San Francisco. I have a family, 2 daughters, and yeah, looking forward to this conversation. I've been in a variety of different environments, mostly in startups, and so it'd be good to kind of discuss how all this impacts teams of all sizes.
Great, thank you. So why are we all here today? Given the last 15 plus months of a global pandemic, we've all had more than our fair share of time to think about and experience firsthand what it means to communicate across teams, an organization, a community, and sometimes those around us. For some companies, though, the 360 shift to remote working introduced challenges that nobody was prepared for. It led to decisions being made on how and when to communicate and which tool to use, without obviously having the luxury to test the theories out. What I would like to do today is to look at what it takes to build those tools for improved cross-team communications and collaboration, and hear from our expert panel what they found has worked or not worked in each of their experiences and the challenges they've overcome and encountered through that time. So my esteemed guests, what have we learned from the past year to ensure that communication is key for success? Let's kick it off there.
I can go first. So I think even in normal times, communication and collaboration or really difficult challenges to solve. I have historically worked in various distributed teams, but never at this scale where every single person is working remotely under really stressful conditions and circumstances, personally and otherwise. So for me, it's about how do we include consciously every member of the team and actually successfully bringing them together and keep that feeling of togetherness, even in remote working situations, being quite key. And communication, keeping open communication channels all the time kind of helped us get there to some extent.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think before the pandemic hit, I was a part of some teams that were kind of hybrid as far as some being on site, some being remote. And we had to tackle a lot of issues around it being a different experience for those 2 types of employees. And so we actually found some ways that didn't work perfectly, where we kind of decided if one person was remote, everyone was remote. So we would have people right at the office still taking meetings from their desk. But there were still a lot of times when there were ad hoc meetings. People saw each other from across the room. So we really need to make a decision over the past year. How do you replicate that water cooler meeting or across the room? And if we actually had to or not. And I'd like to be that, like that to be part of the discussion here, actually.
Great idea.
Yeah, and What's interesting is Netflix is almost famous for being co-located. One of the last Silicon Valley companies where pretty much everyone's located either in the South Bay or in LA. And so for us, it was a pretty big deal to actually go into this environment. And as Gurzati said, like, you know, it's also a very unique circumstance. It wasn't like we, you know, wanted to go into remote. It was almost forced upon us, right? And so I think for us, one of the most important tools was just top-down alignment, is from the leadership on down to be aligned that this is the way we're going to go. And we're actually going to shift our mindset, that it wasn't a temporary thing. And I think for a period of time, everyone thought, oh, it's temporary, we'll just go back. We'll be back in the office and it'll be fine again. And I think what's really changed is leadership from Reed and Ted all the way down to individual leaders and managers is like, no, we need to start preparing for this like new world of remote inclusive hiring and leading and growing people. And so for us, it was actually the mind shift was really key. And to like go back and forth is not good for your teams, and to just plow forward, right? And say, hey, we just need to start preparing for this, start changing our practices, start changing our working model, rethink everything, right? Don't just assume we can just meet to have an offsite or at a regular time or randomly, right? Start planning for quarterly, yearly offsites. And so I think that was a big lesson for us. And we've done a fantastic job turning it around in such a short time. And I think it really was driven from top down and bottoms up, like buy-in.
That's a good point, Bruce. So do you think the fact that it was so successful was because it came from top down? That it was very clear across the board from the very beginning, this is the plan forward. It was clear, it was precise, and people knew what was actually happening. So being transparent and over communicating at the time. And did that help then drill down into basically going, we need to make a decision to use tools by a certain date or a certain time to then allow people to work remotely? Awesome. Okay, cool. Did you have any impact or any challenges from going from co-located to remote? Did it impact morale, and what has it potentially opened up then going forward?
I think one of the key challenge is, recreating that trust and transparency. I think we touched on the transparency part a little bit, but also, how do we actually get people to open up, working around some of those personal circumstances, home learning, for example, and dealing with various different commitments. It kind of brought us closer to people's personal life in a sense. So I feel connected more at a personal level with the rest of my team. And how do we kind of accommodate the varying time zones and also people's geographical distribution. So back early last year, Expedia Group went through a massive reorganization. There's kind of we had to quickly scramble around and pull together this remote working for various different reasons. From we had teams working from Seattle to India, all having to work and push through common objectives. So we had to look for where can we be more efficient in terms of communication and collaboration. Any way of simulating a co-located environment wasn't going to work, because we had like back-to-back one-on-ones or team meetings all the time. So we had to quickly find ways to make it more efficient and time-saving.
Could you give us an example of some of the stuff that you've done to make it efficient and time-saving? Because I know sometimes we're all back-to-back in meetings. You feel like it's just never-ending actually getting work done at times.
Yeah, any way by which we can short-circuit the need for everybody to come together in a single meeting to make decisions and calls. So if we can put out like a Confluence page or wiki page which consolidates people's thoughts, views, and requests for comments on it, and then kind of keep the meeting that makes the key decisions shorter. So that's one of the examples by which we made things a little bit more efficient and time zone friendly.
Awesome, that's great, thank you. Anything else anyone wants to add on that topic?
Yeah, I think one thing that I've noticed from the pandemic being the force of this change, when there's a forced change, I think people are a lot more forgiving than when there's a decision-based change. Whenever everybody will question your decision, if you make some sort of reorg or some major change based off of that. But I think everybody worldwide understood the pandemic and was forgiving to the changes that needed to come. And so that kind of addresses the morale a little bit. We kind of had a free pass for a while. Yeah. As it went on, the questions legitimately started coming in of, what are the long-term plans of this? And I can say this, before the pandemic, there were two schools of thought. There were people that believed that all of this work that we do, a lot of this work that we do can be done remotely. And those folks, the morale went way up because we all got to eat that dog food and see it like they saw it. And so I think that we're still in that. You got some people that are desperate to get back to the office, but some more people have seen that we can work remotely.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think in many ways, because it was a global situation, everybody kind of went straight away to working from home or having to think, well, actually, we still need to communicate. We still need to get the point across. We still need to attend meetings. It became nearly more of an even footing, right? Yep. Because now everybody's having to dial in and have their videos run. And actually, I've seen like an increase in communication. So people are having their agendas ahead of time. Wiki pages, like you said, are updated. There is more clear transparency. You can track where that decision was made, because I think when it was in person times, we've gone from having like conversations in person. We go to that water cooler conversation and you have that going, oh, actually, perhaps if we've done this, we reach a decision much faster, but it's not captured. And now we've had to face that it's now captured and actionable in a wider setting. Has anybody found really good tools for this kind of stuff? Like I know you mentioned wiki pages, but for joint collaborations, is anything that has stood out to you in the past?
It's not a tool, but it's almost a modus operandi, like a way to work. And one thing that we found is definitely having, we're already a memo culture, but then having the memos ahead of time, pre-reads, and really think through stuff. But a couple of things I've seen recently that has worked really well is one is that kind of like Amazon famous take time to read the thing before you start talking. And so sometimes when it's like everyone's busy, there's a lot going on, we actually take the first 10 minutes to read the memo, like as a group, and then start the conversation to make sure everyone is level set on what we're talking about, right? And that way it makes the synchronous meetings, which you want to have less and less, more effective, right? Second model that I've seen work really well is instead of using the meetings for status updates, you use it for discussions and blockers. And so what we do is you take the 10 minutes in the beginning meeting to write down the status. Everyone can read each other's status. And then you jump in to the blockers and concerns from the team. And this works really well with a bunch of cross-functional partners where there's like a lot of activity going on. You're not even sure what everything's doing. And instead of spending an hour just updating each other what's happening, you like write it down, take about 10 minutes, and then you actually go into the meat of the conversation with the stuff that you actually have to work through, discussion topics, concerns, stuff like that. And then you help surface the most important things to actually discuss live, right? And I think what it really is doing is prioritizing that time, is considering it very precious and using it effectively.
Yeah, I love the reference to the Amazon 6-pager approach. We don't actually do that, but we're all learning right on this call, right? We may pick that up, but I definitely identify and have spoken to our teams about less status meetings and more work sessions. Let's come together, but let's look for output in these meetings rather than just status. So I think that's been something that I've enjoyed and has changed since the beginning of the pandemic that we worked through.
So we know like we've all had our own teams, and obviously I think sometimes it's easier to communicate, and obviously this is the process for our own team and it works fine. But how have we dealt with, say, cross communication with other teams in the organization? So say for engineering working with product or product working with marketing, have you ever had to encounter any similar kind of like blocks to working and trying to do this new process that you've had to like encounter and streamline the process going forward?
Yeah, I think, like I said, even in good times, cross-team communication, things tend to fall through cracks. And where you would have normally walked across the floor, got to, go out to one of the engineers, ask questions, or at least understand what's going on in their team. it's so much more difficult. One of the out of sight, out of mind problem. And we have felt the pain of it when particularly one of the platform and infrastructure teams kind of do the migration from legacy platforms to newer platforms. We haven't been informed, and we had to scramble around at the last minute to actually make things work and not fall over for our customers. So I think one of the key learning from that is not to make assumptions that everybody is tuned into like Slack channels for notifications or communications, but kind of make sure that you're fanning out those key announcements as much as possible, and keeping everybody up to date, because different people have different preferences to where they tune in for these kind of organizational announcements and updates.
Yeah, I agree. And speaking across teams to somebody, to groups like product and program management, it's what we found is, and this was before the pandemic, but more so after the pandemic started, is dashboards are huge, and meaningful dashboards are really huge. And they had to mean something to the different parties that view those things. So we really took a lot of time to make sure that our agile process and the engineers that move cards across the board, that there is a level of abstraction that's in the dashboards that makes sense to product. They really get an idea of, is progress being made? Are we stalled? Do we need to step in and help in some way? And that means something different to the product group, the program group, and the engineering leadership. But all of them should have some sort of view that's based on the same level of progress that's being made on the software itself.
That is such a beautiful point, though, because when you think about like communicating like a metric or a measure of a success, if people can read that without actually being physically there to explain it to them, having to sit through a meeting, it's eye-opening, really, because it opens up the world to more people being involved. And I think at that point in time, you potentially have an ability to have people potentially like look at the work that you're doing and offer some insight or offer ideas. And that is a great example of cross communication, like, because it's opening up a whole different avenue than where you currently are in your own organization. Great comment.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a quick example. We made a dashboard that highlighted undefined work towards a particular product, and how that really, you can have a date that looks like it's set out there based off of the workload that you've defined, but that undefined work could really come and bite you and mess with your, with your timelines. And so we put that right in front of people to say, hey, listen, this is how much we don't know about what we're making right now. So you should probably be monitoring us bringing that down to zero, and that should be something that should be transparent, and you should know when we get to a point when we don't have any undefined work left.
Just drilling down, I'm just fascinated by this. How did this project come about? Like what kickstarted that project being built? Like what was the outcome that you were trying to achieve? Was it that you knew stuff wasn't being built or not being worked on that you wanted to fix or showcase that you needed extra people to help you work on it?
Yeah, this comes from having a healthy empathy towards what the other groups need. Now, when you're dealing with program management and product management, sometimes they want dates that are a lot further out than an engineering team wants to give. Mm-hmm. So all you can do is come up with some speculation sometimes. And so that's what we did. When the work that we had defined was used to come up with a date. The work that we had undefined was used to come out with a much further out date. Mm-hmm. And you could get a much more and a confidence level in that date. And so as we were bringing down that undefined work, that gave a clearer picture to product and program that we're a little bit more confident in this date that we're giving you now that all the undefined work has been cleared out.
Awesome. That's amazing. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because like we also had sort of this problem where like product requests coming from different teams. So we sit between like UI teams and backend engineering teams and platform. And so different requests would come in different directions. Like teams would ask us to implement some feature at our layer, or, platform would have a request on migrating something, or we would have a request on some team to deprecate something. And so what we did is we actually try to like incorporate all this into like a board that we can look at, right? And basically establish a process, because before it was maybe okay that people pinged you and like got answers, and I think like establishing it with a board to like track it, and even if it's completely internal, it actually like helps convey to your cross-functional partners of like what you're doing, right? And so what I found is early on, it was just for ourselves to establish some process to handle product requests so we weren't so reactive, right? But then over time, we found it as a very powerful tool to be like, well, I was asked this and this, but then I can't do both at the same time. So which one do you want me to do? And you can start really measuring, you know, prioritization between the tasks, right? And I think having that kind of model really helps.
Yeah.
And I think that's the hardest thing. What Mike was saying about empathy is really understanding the other side, and then them understanding your side, and then having a common language that you can like communicate
Yes.
over, and a common goal really helps. Right? Like, hey, we both want to get this feature out, but maybe you can tell us a little earlier next time. Or,
Yeah.
hey, is this really important? Do you actually, is that date hard date, or can we move it? And just asking that kind of follow-up question, because you have that board and you can see what's going on, really can help partner. You know, you understand what partners are looking for, and they understand your challenges and gaps.
So you're able to make better data-driven decisions and then see where you need extra help, I think, which is a good thing. And also showing like where actually maybe you need extra human beings to help work on different areas that need extra TLC, or just where there's a new feature being requested. I love dashboards, and the more we have that are automated that just can showcase our stuff, it makes decisions so much easier to come up in the end. Just thinking about like how we can unconsciously involve people, because obviously time zones, we're all knowing right now. I know that Bruce and Mike, you're both in the States. I'm over here in the UK, as Guthrie is. Like, how can we make sure that we're collaborating with the rest of our team, making sure they're involved, they have a voice at the table? What can we do, or what have you been doing in your team, if it's like rotating meetings, or to make sure that people feel involved? And have you noticed that people who are remote right now feel more confident in speaking up in meetings? They probably wouldn't have done so had a meeting been in person.
The hand feature is absolutely game changing, because I think like in a normal meeting where you're just all around the table, people can sort of like, the loudest voice can win, right? Because they're sort of dominating the conversation. But with hands, you sort of have a more structural way to call people, and like, and you can even identify, well, you've kind of raised your hands 2-3 times, maybe let someone else answer, right? And so I think that's definitely changed quite a bit. Just having that sort of like model in which it's more normalized, like hands, or using, you know, a Q&A tool or something like that, like just a way to like organize so that it's not being like, you know, you're actually sorting sort of the questions appropriately. And so I think that's helped a lot and changed many kind of ways of how we act. I think I almost forgot what it's like to be in a normal meeting where a bunch of people are talking, right? Like you're just kind of like used to this whole like calling on people and raising hands and giving space for people to think, right? Because it's just, we're all on VC.
Sure.
Yeah, I quite like one of Zoom's feature of breakout rooms. That definitely kind of helps to kind of form smaller groups, and then regrouping and discussing, having a representative from each breakout room to kind of summarize things. So that's really good for encouraging group discussion, where people who are not comfortable speaking to a wider group, but more comfortable in a smaller one. It's definitely encouraged them to speak up a little bit more, but also inviting and asking, like Bruce mentioned that as well, actually nominating people, to kind of providing them an opportunity to speak up and share their opinions and thoughts. And doing this consciously. I think it's very easy to overlook the quietest person in the room, and I've been one of those, even though I just won't shut up now. So I have to consciously make sure that I'm not hogging the calls and inviting opinions actively.
Yeah. One thing that we've always been using in like all hands, but we're using it in smaller meetings now, is the being able to do the anonymous feedback. And we might just use a forms group to do that, or we might use a larger application like Slido or something, but just be careful. That is opening up Pandora's box a little bit for, you know, the kind of questions that could derail the meeting. So the moderator should watch those things closely and understand, is this something that's actually going to really benefit the meeting, or might this be something we can table and answer afterwards? But anonymous kind of gets that last little set of people, the people who won't speak up in large meetings and who also won't speak up in small meetings, but still have something to say. Having something that can allow them to speak up anonymously is helpful.
That's a tricky one to balance it, because sometimes the anonymous question is coming from a place where they may be just embarrassed to ask that question. I think they're shy, or they're going, I don't want to ask the stupid question, but I really want to ask the question. So there is that balancing act, and you're right, moderators is the way to go, like from using that feature.
Or they're worried they might be offending someone.
That's just it. Like you don't know. You don't know if that question is going to upset somebody, but you also are curious about it, but you're still too shy to put your name in front of it. I completely understand that feature. Yeah, I think having these kind of like town hall meetings for organizations to communicate top down, but also from team-wide meetings, we've used tools like Remo where you can do breakout sessions and have tables and just do one of our teammates organize like a games night and different tables of games. It's just allowing people to still feel connected, right?
Yeah, so definitely we have kind of improved on a couple of those thoughts. So we have started organizing every other week like an engineering meet or team meet, where once in a while we pick a conference talk or some talks or YouTube video that we can all watch together. And there's a tool called Watch Together, which allows you to kind of get that shared viewing experience. And then we go on a so it's not like on Zoom sharing the screen, but rather you can watch on your own browser, but it gives you the feel of viewing together. And then we have like a follow-up discussion, and you know, it has improved team morale, but also given really good ideas about what we can incorporate back into our team.
Yeah, to your question, you had asked about like different time zones and how do you kind of account for that. And I think for us, I think someone mentioned like, I think just being conscious of it, because, you know, think about, we were all in the Pacific time zone, everyone could meet in a meeting. You never had to think about that, rarely, right? And then you all of a sudden went to like, you're not even sure where people are, you don't know what time zone they're in, like they could be anywhere. And I think that shift from, hey, we're all in the same place, to like, we're not even sure where everyone is. And then also being conscious of like, I hired someone in the East Coast, right? I knew that there was going to be a time zone gap. And then being conscious that like, this is her working hours, right? Like it's, yes. You can't schedule meetings at 4 p.m. because she's like having dinner with her family, right? And, you know, and so like actually being conscious of like where everyone's like at, and not just having a very Pacific time zone centric view of the world, I think is one of the big steps for a company that's shifting from like, you know, co-locate. I think if you're used to that hybrid environment, it's probably more of a second nature. But for us, it was really being conscious of like, hey, we got to rethink all the meetings, because, you know, you can't have afternoon meetings anymore, or you can't do it the way you did before. And so being conscious of people and really being inclusive, truly be inclusive, not just, you know, oh, well, we won't have to worry about that person, right? Like really be inclusive, I think is actually harder than you think.
Yes. It is completely inclusive. Doesn't mean just going, hey, I know it's really early, so you don't need to turn up. But then they're like, don't get an opportunity to add their thoughts to a meeting or add those thoughts to agenda. So like rotating that meeting is a great opportunity. Like what Gayatri doing is like having the wiki page updated so there's still a record of it. I personally like to record my team meetings. People can watch them afterwards. And I call it action items from it. I found actually that's made things a lot easier, because sometimes people don't want to go back and read a wiki page, but they will actually turn on a 15-20 minute video in the background and listen to it to catch up in the meeting. That's one thing I have tried to do at the moment.
And by the way, this being lead dev, for the leaders out there, sometimes you just have to have the meeting twice. If you're talking about offshore or something where the clock is completely different, and you really want those employees to get a similar experience, your leaders might have to, you know, get up and do a 1 a.m. meeting or something to you know, the recording is great and you should do it so that they get that information. But sometimes, you know, that representation at the meetings is important.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, we've been doing that actually because, you know, we have a pretty global team when you think about like our productions and stuff like that. And so we started doing that with town halls that kind of come in different times. So I remember like, I was like, I can't really attend this 5:30 a.m. meeting, but then it's like they have different ones throughout the day, right? Because it's accounting for the different, and then sometimes you have to, being in the Pacific, you need to wake up at 7:30 if you want to attend this meeting or attend a 6 p.m. meeting. And it's also kind of like, let's all be more equal about when we'd have to give up time if really we need to. So it's not so centric to one group of people.
And I think calling that out and saying thank you for attending, just a simple thank you, that you appreciate somebody getting up either really early or staying back really late. It's just appreciate that they are giving up their time, getting up earlier, staying back late. It's just, you know, you're saying thank you because it actually does matter. We still want you to be involved, but they are giving up their time. So I think actually always acknowledging that is a really nice thing to do.
Great point.
I think what one of the, just want to chime in there. So I think one of the other things that this has made us do within Expedia Group is rethink how we organize ourselves as teams, and to encourage smaller, more autonomous teams who are not co-located in an office, but in a country or in a time zone where, you know, they are empowered to make key decisions with very little dependency on another team in another time zone, but have fewer touch points that spans across time zones. So that is something that's kind of needed, even architectural changes in some cases, but something that's even more effective and long-term rather than just finding out tools and meetings that kind of patches over a really difficult challenge and a problem for any team to be productive and effective.
Yeah, that's a great point, especially when you start thinking about things like when you separate out a QA team or something, and you think it's a good idea to have a QA team in a different place than the engineering team, and then you have to wait that whole 12-hour clock to actually say, well, no, I don't think this is a bug, and then let it wait the whole day.
But if everybody's remote, multiple locations, it opens up more opportunity to find different people in different time zones as well. So it does open up a whole different kind of like, yeah, it's an interesting issue to deal with. So I know I've said it before, but being remote now and being remote in a pandemic is two different things entirely different. But the tools we can use now can help foster more remote inclusivity and build upon that connectiveness. So for example, like I know the whiteboards are brilliant and I love using them. I used to have one here, but you don't really have that as a remote kind of option. I've yet to find, and I'd love if anybody's listening here today to give us ideas of the tools they've used that have made that connectivity. But what tools have you found that you wouldn't go back to being without? Like, has there been anything over this?
Okay, Gayatri, you're taking over as the host. Okay.
It's such an on brand thing in the pandemic. It's just like connections and free.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
So yeah, I don't know what where I jumped off, but I was like, what tools have you found that you wouldn't go back to being without of?
I love Donut. Donut's good. I'd probably, sometimes I feel bad like avoiding Donut because I'm so busy, and I love how it gets progressively more aggressive. If anybody out there doesn't know Donut, it kind of, you sign up for it and it randomly places you with another person and says, hey, you two should schedule a meeting together. And at first, Donut will say you two should do it. If you wait a day or two, it'll say, okay, you, Mike, specifically, you scheduled a meeting. It's your job. And then if you wait a little bit longer, it says, hey, did you ever schedule this meeting? So it's, I like the aggressive nature of Donut, and I've used it very much. Continue to.
So as alternatives of whiteboards, I have to say we haven't quite found anything that is as effective as actually moving around, standing around the whiteboard and just doodle on it. But we have used both for interviews and for collaboration as well, some of those online equivalents of it, Miro boards, and ideas board for doing retros. We've actually moved retros to be on over Slack. So that is something that we have found is quite effective, and you can kind of go refer back to those threads.
Yeah.
And for those who haven't been able to join on the actual retro calls as well, to kind of refer back to action items and so on. Yeah, so Google Charts and Jamboards have been kind of equally good. But would I actually give up a real whiteboard for them? Maybe not. Not quite there yet.
Yeah, yeah, we use stuff like Tuple or like Code With Me or something like from IntelliJ so that people could pair program.
Yeah, Code With Me is good.
People. Yeah, but I think this. I know this is not the answer that you want, but I think we need to like also think about like there's also room for meeting and whiteboarding. Like you shouldn't like completely throw away that tool in your tool belt, because you know how we act in the pandemic is different than how we act like when everyone can get back, and every remote first, remote only company gets together, right? Like that is, we're humans, we're social creatures, we need that. And so I think like there is that aspect where like don't just throw that out because you can't do it today. That is an important tool in your tool belt, and you have the other tools as well that you will continue to use. One thing that seems like obvious, but maybe not for a remote, a co-located company is like, video conferencing, like that you wouldn't actually give it up, right? Like that you continue to use it for town halls and sync meetings and like not meetings that aren't critical for in-person. And so that's actually how we're approaching, is that we're basically by default, everything's gonna be virtual. And then we pick the few times where we actually get back together in person. And so like actually like committing to that is a big deal, like saying, hey, we're gonna go virtual for pretty much everything, even when we go back to the office. And even considering being on VC, even though you're in the office, right, for a meeting, so that you don't like have half the people in the room and half the people outside, and then it gets really confusing. And so I think tools like that, like to maintain it even after you have an office setting, is actually, seems like, obvious, but I think is actually quite important that you maintain that.
I think calling that out as well, like, is the fact that we are all going to go back to some sort of hybrid model. And having video on is for me is a must right now, because like at least you get to see people. And again, it goes back to the raising the hand question. If you're in a meeting room and you can see this video, they're waving, you can acknowledge the fact they're looking to speak. And I know people have always been like reticent of turning their videos on in the past, but I think if we go back to the hybrid model, we're going to have to look at that way as to make sure people feel involved in and included in that conversation. But here's a question.
Laura, you made a great point with the, it's just so hard to find a replacement for the whiteboard. So I definitely have bought my own, and I think that's a great idea for people who like to communicate via the whiteboard. Have it there, have it right over your shoulder.
Yeah.
Be ready to use it. And if you think about it, a lot of times when we used whiteboards in person, what happened at the end of the meeting? Somebody would take a picture of it and send it out to people. So you could still do that at the end of your meetings and still have the whiteboard benefits there.
That's so true. The other tool that we've used a lot of is stickies for doing our retros. It's quite handy. It's like you can move all the little sticky notepads around. So I find that quite useful. But here's a question for you all. And I know obviously like we've still continued to grow in this last year. But how have we managed to onboard our people? How have we managed to make people feel connected while joining, while being remote, and having had to onboard them, make sure they still feel connected to their team, to the organization, to get that information? An example I could give on our side of things is one of our managers automated the onboarding tickets. So we created an onboarding ticket system in Jira, and there's a number of tasks. It's quite simple and it's basic, but it's very functional. How have people managed to make sure their teams feel connected?
So just to give an example, we, for more junior engineers like grads or apprentices who join, we do assign a buddy. But in this truly remote working situation, it just felt like everybody is in need of a buddy when they join. So we kind of, again, consciously assign somebody that they can pair with and work closely with until such time that they feel like they can be a bit more independent, and at least they feel more connected with at least one person in the team, but also, you know, making sure that they are aware that they can reach out to anybody within the team, but also have some of the folks reach out to that person who's just newly onboarded, introduce themselves, and proactively offer help if they need.
That's so sweet. I really like that idea. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, buddy is really important. I think it doesn't even matter now if whether you're junior or senior. The most senior person, I think you should have a buddy. And we've even considered like multiple buddies, where you have a buddy in the team and then you have a buddy in like a sister org or something, where they can kind of like be more of a different kind of buddy and navigate through like, you know, the company. One thing we've done, and this has been a tradition in the team, in the broader organization, I'm under Product Edge Systems, is my boss, he'll do a 6-picture intro where you put together 6 pictures of yourself and you intro yourself at a team-wide meeting, right? And then we're actually even doing re-intros where people who've been on the team for like 5-8 years can actually like re-intro themselves, so that new people who've never met them can actually get to know like different people. And I think that connectivity is like really important to just also establish that sort of like social connection that, hey, yeah, we're here to do a job, but also we have lives and families and things that we care about. And it's good to know. And then because it's in a presentation format, you can kind of go back and look at everyone's pictures if you want. I mean, obviously it's not gonna have all the context. It's just the pictures. And then the person talks about what each picture means. Yeah.
I think that's a wonderful idea. I can't wait to bring that on board to my team. I think that's a genius idea.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm stealing that one.
Me too.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, I have to credit Philip. Okay, he came up with the idea. I'm just using his.
Thank you, Philip. Thank you, Philip.
It gives you a hope, and like it gives you a view into your colleagues also. Again, when you go to schedule that meeting, going, actually, that person's got a newborn baby. They're not really going to want a 9 p.m. call, are they? But they might want to get up at 6 a.m. for that call. No problem. You know. Great call. Thank you for that.
In addition to the buddy system, what a leader on our team did this amazing job where she has a prepared scavenger hunt she leads an SRE team, and it's these things that the only way you finish them is to, number one, in the end, know what that particular tool is that we use to do it. And in a lot of them, you have to ask specific people for help. So then they get to meet people and then learn the tools in order to finish the scavenger hunt.
Oh, nice.
That's genius.
That's a cool idea. Also, then you know what you need to document more. You're like,
oh, you credited Philip. You credited Philip. I'll credit Arlene.
Wow, this is amazing. We're at our time, folks. Thank you so much for all the good insights for today's panel. We'll be all heading over now to the Lead Dev Slack in Effective-Teams channel. Please head there to continue the discussion, and feel free to ask us all the questions that we haven't had a chance to answer. And thank you for joining, and we hope to see you the next time. And thank you to my panelists. You have been amazing, and I've learned so much from you all today. Thank you so much.